Flash photography is highly intimidating, but today I will show you easily how to get started off in it. So when I first got started in food photography, I really wish that I understood a lot more about artificial lighting and specifically flash lighting, because it seemed really intimidating because there was a lot to know, there was a lot of terms, and I just felt like only professionals use that. With continuous lights, it's a little bit more self-explanatory because you turn the light on and you understand that that's how the scene is lit. But with flash, it seems like it's a little bit more nitpicky. Why you would shoot with a flash, for one thing, is flash lighting is just so much stronger, and a lot of the times it's a lot stronger than just a continuous light. But also, if you typically shoot your food or whatever your subject is indoor and you have a lot of ambient light going on, like you have, the house lights on, or you have the sun from the outside, using flash, you can cancel out that ambient light so that it's not part of your photo, or you can also include some of it as well. So it really gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of your photography. So today though, I wanted to shoot a video where it was just a quick and easy guide to how to get started with flash photography, how to turn everything on, what are your basic functions that you need to know so that you can just start shooting with the light. And I think that is really the secret to perfecting flash photography, because it is a little bit more nitpicky, but essentially you have to start shooting to start being able to do it well. And so this is just a really quick and easy guide to get you all started. So the first thing that I think you absolutely need to know how to do for flash photography is how to shoot on manual in your camera. And last time we did a really quick and easy video on shutter speed, on ISO, on aperture, and how to just adjust and tinker with those three to get the image that you want. But for sure, for flash photography, when you're tinkering with the power of your flash or how to get a photo to look more natural, you absolutely need to know how to play around with your camera and how to be shooting manually. So the second thing that you would need to know and you would need to have is one of these. So this is a flash trigger, and essentially it communicates from your camera to your flash when you are going to be taking the photo so that it knows when to flash. And there's a couple of kinds of different flash lighting. So one of the options of your flash lighting is going to be your studio strobe, and usually studio strobes, they're bigger, so it's a lot bigger of a setup, they're heavier, they're also more expensive. A second option is that a lot of people have this, and these are speed lights, and they are great, and usually there's the light and then the transmitter. What is good about speed lights is that they're really mobile, they don't hardly weigh anything, you can take them anywhere. And they are really inexpensive as well, and you can get some really good ones for a very good price. But for these speed lights anyways, you can actually connect it right onto the camera and then have the camera trigger the light. But with food photography, we usually like to be able to control where the light is coming from so that we can create the effect that we want and naturally have a more natural effect as well. And so whether you are using either a bigger strobe or one of these speed lights, you will want to be connecting this to a tripod. It will be separate from your camera, and so naturally you would need to get a trigger. Essentially, you type in the name of your strobe or you type in the name of your speed light and your camera brand, and they will give you a list of triggers that will work for your camera along with whatever lights that you have. And usually if you buy speed lights, I generally see them coming in pairs. Like usually there's already the trigger and the light itself, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Today I was really lucky because Godox was able to send us one of their newer flash lighting setups, and that is the AD300. And one of the reasons that I actually requested it was because it actually has really good reviews online, and now I kind of understand why, is because the whole light itself fits into this small thing. Obviously, you will have to, if you bring this on to shoots, you're gonna have to bring your umbrella and then you have to bring your tripod. But everything else fits into this, which is crazy. For food photography anyways, because usually you're in a studio, I think people tend to use more of the bigger strobes. I mean, you can certainly use a speed light if you want, but people tend to use the bigger strobes. And this one is kind of a nice option because it is strong enough to be used as a strobe. It's quite a powerful light, but at the same time, it is, very portable, very much like a speed light. So you can just bring it anywhere. Alrighty, so to get started, obviously the first thing that you need to do is to turn on your transmitter and turn on your flash. Now, obviously different companies have their switches in different places, so you might have to consult a manual for that, but typically pretty straightforward. Something to also note is that if you are shooting during daylight and it happens to be really sunny, I generally like to keep the curtains closed just so that I don't need to deal with the ambient light from the sun and then the flash as well. So after you've turned on both your transmitter and your light, I'm just gonna go through a couple of the settings that you see on your screen so that you can start shooting. So first, what you want to make sure is that the channel on your transmitter matches the channel on your light so that they can communicate. And the reason is because one transmitter can actually control several lights. So let's say you had something like 5 lights. You might have a channel 1, 2, 3, 4, or an A, B, C, D, E. So when you switch between the channels, you are only controlling that specific light. So first off is to just make sure that they both pair up. So the next setting is your power feature, and this is really the main thing that you need to know about flash because it controls how much power the flash is, and obviously the higher that power, the stronger the flash. Now, how the power values work is it's actually displayed in terms of fractions. So 1/64 means that you're using 1/64 of the power of the actual flash. And the highest that you can get to is 1/1, which is the full power of the flash. So for the most part, especially with fairly strong strobes like the AD300, you're never going to need to come close to using the 1/1, the full power of your flash, because what you all will realize if you get one, either a speed light or a strobe, is that flash is really powerful. Like, there are these short bursts of really powerful light, and most likely you will never need to go 1/1. And most of the time what you end up doing is to work on how to make that strong bit of light look more natural. And so that needs to go back to the video that we talked about before on how to shoot manual. And I'll link that above if you all don't know it, but it is definitely a good prerequisite for any kind of flash shooting. And then, of course, to make the photo more natural, you're going to need to work with how to place your light and where to place it. Further away, closer, higher up, or right where the food is. And then also to be working with diffusers as well. That is going to be your best friend when you are talking about flash lighting. So the next thing that you might see on your screen is actually the zoom feature, and this one goes from 24 millimeters all the way to 200 millimeters. So what the zoom feature actually does is it controls how dispersed the light is. So very much like a lens, where if it's at 24 millimeters, so fairly wide lens, it is going to give a more dispersed light, versus if you go all the way up to 200, it is going to be a very focused light. And initially you might not be able to see it with the naked eye, but I'll show you actually a chart in terms of what that light looks like. Okay, so the next setting that you might see on your screen is something called TTL or eTTL versus manual. So basically, TTL stands for through the lens, and it is just this automatic feature where your camera essentially determines for you how much power your flash should have. So that's kind of out of your control, and it's really determined by the light metering system in your camera. Personally, for me, I prefer to shoot on manual just because I want to really be able to control each of the features to get the results that I want. And sometimes when you depend on the TTL or the automatic functions, you're really saying, okay, whatever the camera thinks is best is going to be best. And maybe you don't want that type of effect, or you don't want that, like perfectly lit shot. So for me anyways, I know that sometimes I want specific effects, sometimes I'm adding in different elements, and so I personally like to be shooting on manual so that I can control everything. So I didn't want to leave without talking about high-speed synchronization. So it's another setting that you might see on your camera's flash, but you don't really need it to get started. Essentially what high-speed synchronization is your camera itself has an internal flash that is connected to it. And then obviously with strobes, you're working with an external flash, or with a speed light, you're working with an external flash. Typically for a camera's internal flash, there is a maximum in terms of how quick your shutter speed can be in order for you to expose a photo properly without having parts of it be blocked. We can explain more of that later. But what high-speed synchronization does is, with an external flash, it lets you raise that shutter speed up higher than it would normally go for an internal flash. Usually I'd say when you're in a studio setting where you're able to control all of the lights, especially with food, you're not really going to need to worry about having the shutter speed be super high all that much, but definitely know that it is an option for you in terms of an external flash, and there is an option for that with your flash. So yeah, that's pretty much it for how to get started off in flash photography. I know that there were a couple of points, but once you understand those, it's actually pretty easy to just get started and turn on everything and start shooting. And that really is the secret in terms of how to get good at flash photography, is to start shooting, is to just understand the little bits and pieces and to really tinker with the details as you go. So I hope you all enjoyed that. If you want to see more beginner or intro food photography or photography videos, definitely let me know down below, and any suggestions that you might have. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all again next time. All right, bye.